Hello and welcome to Signals from the Hill. I'm Kat and I do marketing for Avery Hill Publishing. In this episode, I'm talking to Shanti Rai about her book Sennen, which has just come out. Sennen is just one of several great books that we've published this year. Head over to averyhillpublishing.com for more information. They're also available from all good book and comic shops, and digital editions of our books can be found on our Gumroad store. And now here's my chat with Shanti. I'm here with Shanti Rai, whose book Sennen has just come out with Avery Hill. Thank you for agreeing to, yay! Thanks for agreeing to talk to me.
Thank you for having me.
I was thinking about you did an Instagram takeover for Avery Hill where you talked a bit about your process making the book, and I was really interested to hear that it's a story that you'd had in mind for about 14 years. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
literally half of my life.
yeah, wow. And that you had been considering doing it as a novel. You talk a bit about that, how it ended up turning into a graphic novel, and sort of what the process was like of changing the sort of format that it was going to be.
Yeah, so I think for me, the way that most of my stories and things start is by me just daydreaming, because I can't ever just have a moment of peace. I need to be, always thinking about something, imagining something, and so I tend to create these worlds with characters in, and then they're kind of just in my head until I write down what's going on. And so the one with Sennen, like when I was 14, that's when I started thinking about her and the world that she was in. Yeah, and then I did this thing when I was, I think, 18 or 19, where you're supposed to write a novel in a month, like the NaNoWriMo thing.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so that was like the one I did. I thought, oh, I could just write this then. And but this was back in the day, like when you're young and motivated and, and things like that. And you can actually do things in a month. And so I just wrote down everything that was in my head. And then I kind of parked it because now it was out of my head and onto paper. So it kind of felt like, okay, that's closed now. And I never was going to do anything with it. I was just going to leave it. And it was enough for me that I had written it down somewhere and I could start imagining something else. But then when I started making comics and getting into them, I was just thinking that that story in particular might be quite nice in a graphic novel format, just because of the way that you see the world. And kind of, I had in mind from the beginning the kind of reveal at the end when they're standing looking out onto the sea. And I just thought, yeah, this might be a good one. And it wasn't too difficult to convert actually, because there was a lot of filler in the novel, I won't lie to you. So I just picked out the main points and it was
yeah, I was gonna say cutting, you have to kind of be so economical with comics, and you have to have such a small word count that it must have been quite hard to cut it down from a novel length, but if there was loads of filler, maybe it wasn't so.
Yeah. Or I think the whole thing, like with her best friend at the beginning with Nan, in the novel that was like chapters and chapters full of them and their friendship and establishing like all sorts of things. And I just thought, I don't have the page space to be able to do this.
But
yeah,
it's almost kind of what I love about comics is that you realize how little you need to tell a story. Almost, it kind of forces you into being really careful about what you decide to say and show and things. And almost in a way I can imagine, because as you say, it is quite a sort of cinematic story. Like it has all these visual things to it that I suppose in a novel you would have to describe a lot of this, like what places look like and things, whereas in comics you can just kind of show it in a few images or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like a picture does speak 1,000 words, truly. I think if you took away all the pictures, it was just the dialogue of Sennen, it would be nothing. But when you put there's some pages that don't have any words at all, but you can kind of what's happening because you just look at the images.
Yeah,
It's very easier. I like it as well because it's more open to interpretation. With a novel, you're kind of told a lot more, and so you don't really get a chance to use your imagination that much.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's true. I quite like having things that are a bit open-ended in my stories where I just want to see how people interpret it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the fun of it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I find that the world of Sennen is really kind of immersive. So I think you've done a brilliant job of creating the world. And I think partly I was looking through it trying to think what it is that I think so effective. I love the way that you use sound to kind of, because that makes you feel like you're in the world as well. You're kind of hearing what the characters are hearing and things. And also the little small panels that you do that just show little details, like you might have a wider scene and then a small little round panel that just shows a really close up detail. And I think it all just kind of really brings you into the scene. That's something you were kind of trying to achieve.
I think the way that I do panels and stuff is very much through my kind of ADHD brain lens, because I kind of won't focus on just one thing when I'm sat in a room somewhere. My attention will snap between what someone's saying and like a tap dripping in the background and like a car outside. It's going ping, 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 ping all the time. And so when I'm writing a comic and I'm putting the panels in, I'm trying to put in all those little pinging details that I would be noticing if I was there. And it helps kind of build an atmosphere and environment, I think, because ping because you don't exist in a vacuum, do you? Like there are so many things going on all the time, and maybe because I find it so hard to focus on one thing at a time, all of my characters are like that too. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Because you don't experience the world kind of focusing on one single thing at a time. You're always aware of multiple things. And it's really interesting to kind of see that the way you've captured that. Do you have any particular kind of visual inspirations for your comics work? Like, are there any other creators who do this kind of thing well, do you think?
Oh, so many. I mean, your comics are amazing. I love them.
Thank you.
I just need to get that out of the way. But I think I've always just grown up with like Chris Ware is someone who I really, really admire, and I think he does that phenomenally. Like he builds an absolute picture of everything and then kind of zooms in on the different characters and stuff. And then I guess I don't know, it's the thing of like like trying to think. But yeah, I think Chris Ware is definitely, I used to read a lot of his stuff when I first started creating comics for myself. So probably him.
Right.
Give a single other.
I'm really amazed when I see people's work and they've just done things visually that I would never think of, like having just stuff that's as simple as like having round panels and things. I don't know if you've read Mimi and the Wolves, Alabaster Piso, who that's another Avery Hill book. And it kind of it's probably in the same sort of realm as your work. And she does things like that with these beautiful layouts where a panel will be like just a big circular one with stuff happening around the edges. And I'm always just thinking, why am I just using rectangular panels? I need to do more
No, whatever works for your stories, you know.
Yeah.
I think sometimes a panel can really help with a mood and things like that, a panel shape. And sometimes it can be distracting.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what you're trying to tell on that page, what particular story you're telling.
I think that's right. I had a chat with Dave about your book when it was about to come out, and I was saying that I really loved that one panel, the whisper panel, where it's like a crowd and everyone's whispering. And I was saying that on my first reading of the book, I kind of didn't notice all these really cool, like playful visual things that you had done because I was sort of engrossed in the story. But then when I read it again, I kept finding these really cool little details. And he said just what you were saying, that the way you've done it is just right, where it's not obtrusive and kind of distracting as you're reading the story, but it adds things that you almost kind of don't notice, but are really cool. I don't know if I ever explained that.
Thank you. I'm glad it was balanced in the end. It was just whatever I'm feeling. It's good to know that I wasn't just going over the top on every single page, but yeah.
There's just really fun, like there's a page where there's a bit of pipe that just comes down across the page from a building or whatever, and it breaks up some of the panels, and things like that are just so fun when you're when you're kind of admiring the artwork.
Oh,
I love the way you've colored it as well. Do you have a particular approach to using color, or do you just kind of go with what you like, colors that you like?
it depends. It's kind of, there's two prongs to it. The like main one is colors that I like. I'm not gonna do something that I don't find visually pleasing. But then also there is like an aspect of um storytelling to the color. So at the beginning, when Sennen's kind of in the valley, because the setting for me is like in the future, and it's like however long in the future, they don't have endless resources in the way that we do now, where you're making new things all the time. So I wanted all the clothes to be kind of like natural, like they'd been dyed naturally and recycled a million times. And I wanted all the colors to feel kind of natural. And I took a lot of inspiration from kind of folk dress and old illustrations and things like that. So that color was chosen for that reason. And then as you kind of go into the future, you get slightly different shades that are a bit more synthetic stuff. So there's an aspect of storytelling to it as well. But ultimately, it's about pleasing my eyes.
Yeah. And there's sort of so much in the story that it touches on kind of this whole world of like faith and religion and socio-political economic structures and all sorts. I just wondered what got you interested in that. And I think, and also the mythology stuff, because I think in your Instagram takeover you were talking about that quite a lot, the European folk tales and things. Is this all just stuff that you've always been interested in, or have you had sort of particular experiences that have made you interested in these things?
I think, yeah, I've always been interested in religion, particularly because I'm probably from about the age I started thinking about Zen, about, 13, 14. Because my dad's Bengali and his side of the family is Hindu. My mum's white and her side of the family is Christian. And my granddad is a vicar on my mum's side. And then I've grown up in East London with like a lot of friends who are like Muslim or Jewish or, Roman Catholic or whatever. All these different types of religions that have such importance in people's lives, to the point where the War of Independence for Bangladesh in 72 was religion based. It was Hindus fighting Muslims and stuff like that. So that's always been such a huge part of my life, being like, how are people living by, like, how are people giving so much importance to this thing that I don't really understand? And because I was kind of raised with everything, I was always kind of told by my parents, you go and discover things and you figure out what you want to believe in. I think for me, a lot of my growing up and coming of age was realizing that there's all these different religions and how they fit in with each other. And I was always fascinated by all the different mythologies as well, because they're fun. A lot of religions are really fun. They have like really fun stories. Like Hinduism has some great stories. Some of the Bible stories are real, rompers. And so that's something that I've always had in my mind. I've had lots of debates. Like my family love having debates. So we have all sorts of debates about religion and things like that. So yeah, I've always thought about that. And then just growing up, I've always been interested in mythology. I think maybe a part of it is because Hinduism is like a multi-deity religion. And I love looking up like Greek mythology and Norse mythology and all these different gods for different things. It's always fascinated me and been quite fun and interesting. And even though I don't personally believe in it, I still, do all the Hindu festivals and that, where you pray to this god or pray to that god, because for me it's just so fascinating and so fun. And yeah, then when I went to uni, I specifically was looking into different folklore and religion from around the world and how we all have the same stories at their base, base level. Like every human has the same stories, regardless of which country you're in, which religion, which culture. It all boils down to the same thing, which I suppose makes sense because we're all descended from the same people. We all come from Ethiopia ultimately. So the people who were telling stories in Ethiopia, as we split into our different factions and spread out across the globe, those stories kind of stayed with us everywhere. And I find that really fascinating and really comforting. but I also just love the slight cultural differences in all the different tellings of things. So yeah, that's always something I'm going to want to explore for sure.
Yeah, I can see how that's fed into this book for sure, and the character of Sennen herself. Um, one thing I always found really fascinating, being one of my books was about Mexico and spending lots of time there, was the way that the kind of current religious cultural stuff comes from two completely separate cultures that kind of clashed during the conquest. So you've got stuff that's come from Spain and stuff that was pre-existing pre-Columbian culture and religion, and it's all kind of emerged into this whole new interesting thing that's retained elements of both, although the Spanish stuff kind of did its best to take over. So that is really interesting. It's like a whole different branch of Catholicism that's got these other ancient elements woven into it. Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
I was just watching a documentary yesterday. I think it's like a Sue Perkins thing on Netflix where she goes to Latin America
Oh,
and travels around.
I've seen
So
that.
she went to Mexico in the one I saw yesterday,
Oh,
and
right.
she
Was it
did like, yeah, it's great. There was one, and it was exactly what you said. They went to this place where they preserved a body, um, like skeletal remains, as like the Virgin Mary, I guess, and they're doing kind of half really traditional ancient like Mayan rituals, and then half Catholic stuff.
Yeah, it's
Exactly
quite.
that. It was really fascinating, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I used to love, when I was younger, I used to love Greek mythology as well. I grew up in kind of a non-religious household, but going to kind of Christian schools and stuff. But also growing up in London, you are around people from every culture and background, as you said. So
Yeah.
yeah. But I always loved that idea of like the multi-deity religions, where like the Greek ones, where there's just so many crazy characters, and they're so badly behaved in Greek mythology as well. Like the gods are really kind of, it's fascinating. That varies a bit from religion to religion as well. So what did you study at university? I wasn't sure whether you had studied art or, I don't know, anthropology or something.
No,
Whether
I studied illustration actually. Yeah, but I've always been interested in like anthropological things. Like my mum did anthropology, which probably helps because I grew up with kind of, I had all of these anthropological books basically that she'd given me pre-internet because we're old. I, I had all these like books. They were called like something in me books. So it would be like kids from around the world
okay.
and the different cultures and the way that they um live and their religions and things, and that's kind of what I grew up with, so it makes sense why that kind of feeds in. But yeah, illustration was what I went for.
Yeah. I do
Yeah.
sometimes think about that, because I grew up, pre-internet as well. And I can't imagine trying to make comics not having the internet, because I get so much reference material and research and stuff, and it's just at your fingertips. You can kind of find image reference for pretty much anything. And in the
Yeah,
old, you would have had to go to a library and search for particular books on different subjects.
yeah, I
Yeah,
do remember that, go to the library for everything.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, well it's great now, but also with having just a camera in your hand all the time, if you
yeah.
need like a reference of someone pulling your face, you just take a selfie. It's great.
Yeah,
Don't have to worry
yeah.
about it.
I take lots of photos of my hands holding things, because that's
Yeah,
one
me
of the
too.
hardest things. Yeah, I remember my mum was, she got quite interested in children's illustration for a while, and she lent me this book that she had, which was just like photo reference. It was this massive book of photo reference of people in different poses and things, and you could kind of, it was just like, it was kind of nightmarish. It was like, I think if you tried to draw a comic based on these really stiff poses, it would just look awful. But yeah, it's much easier to take your own pictures and things. And
Yeah,
you can find a surprising amount by Googling the right terms, on Google Image, for kind of
I've
person walking down corridor and things.
I have a crazy history of just Google terms. But also I had a lot of help from my one of my best friends and my brother. Um, I would just be like, okay, go out to the garden and like crouch down. I need to see what someone crouching on a bench looks like and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
um, and so before Sennen, you had done some other comic projects. Could you talk a bit about those? I think there was Persephone. Is that one of them?
Yeah. So I literally, not like I've prepared anything, but I do have a couple here. So I think the first one I did pre going to uni, when I just kind of started drawing, was this one called Daydreams. And
Oh,
it was kind of like about my life as an agoraphobic, basically.
wow.
Because I used to be agoraphobic and I didn't leave my house for a year.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and so I just didn't, all I did was stay inside, listen to the radio, and practice drawing. Because I didn't actually know how to draw before I was 18, I guess. And then in this year of agoraphobia, I was like, well, if I'm stuck inside, I should probably learn a skill. I was like, comics the way to go. So that's the one that I started with. It was very, personal thing. And
Mm,
then, yeah, when I was at uni, I did Persephone, which
mm.
I suppose I've always been fascinated with mythology, as I said. But it's very, a lot of the tellings of them obviously is very patriarchal, and you always wonder, like some of the stories are horrible for women, and they're just told in this kind of very matter-of-fact way. But I was just wanting to, think about the way that Persephone would feel about her situation, the fact that she's only allowed to like stay above ground for 6 months of the year, and then
Mm.
she has to go back every winter back to her prison, basically.
Mm.
So Persephone is just about the journey that she makes, like having to like go back to this place where she's not very happy. Um, yeah, and then my thesis comic after that was Co, which was a kind of me trying to tell a new folk tale kind of thing. So
Mhm.
I looked up lots of creation myths, and I made a new but not new creation myth, which was a kind of culmination of all these different types of things where the sun and the moon and the earth were all born from eggs. And
Wow.
and yeah, and they're all like snake eggs and stuff, because snakes and eggs and mothers are like common themes in creation myths, obviously.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so that was kind of what that was about, and exploring a bit about loss and family and things like that in the way that I explore those things in Sennen as well.
And
Yeah,
those got reviewed on Broken Frontier, didn't they? Um,
yeah,
were you one of the creators to watch from Andy?
was
Yeah,
yeah, post graduation in
that's
2018.
brilliant.
Yeah, it was really fab actually. I think I only got connected to Avery Hill because of um the Broken Frontier Six to Watch thing. So
Yeah,
that was a really great moment for me. I was like very thankful to Andy Oliver.
I
Um,
it's such a
yeah,
great thing that he does. I mean,
it is.
he works so hard to just kind of bring creators to people's attention. So it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm forever grateful. Little thank you in the back of Sennen for him.
Yeah, yeah, that's really.
Otherwise it wouldn't exist.
And so, how did Avery Hill end up getting in touch? Did they just email you or find you?
Mm, yeah, so I think Dave emailed me and just was like, saw you on Broken Frontier. If you were interested in pitching something, pitch. And so I came up with um the kind of character designs for the story that I already had, and put in a few bullet points of the what the script would be. And it did evolve a bit from there, but it's pretty much what was in the pitch,
Wow,
which
brilliant.
like is surprising for me as well, because I usually like morph and change throughout.
Mhm.
But I actually stuck to an idea for once. So yeah.
Brilliant. Um, I wondered if I don't know if you're happy talking about this, but I know that you have some health issues with fibromyalgia as well, and that must kind of affect how you're able to work on comics, because comics are really, really hard, like really demanding work. I don't know if you're happy talking about that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, so when I first got that email from Avery Hill, I hadn't been diagnosed with
Oh
anything yet.
God.
Yeah, so I left uni and I was a bit tired, because what fibromyalgia is like chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and a whole bunch of other horrible symptoms, but those are the main two ones. So
Mm.
I was a bit tired, and I was having, slightly more headaches than normal, but I wasn't, anywhere near like what I am now. And I had no idea what was coming. So after I kind of signed up to do Sennen, it was then that things started to go downhill. I think originally the project was supposed to be completed in like 9 months, and it ended up taking 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because it is, even sitting at a desk right now, like me sitting here right now is painful. It's very, very painful. Like on every part of your body, it's painful. So when you're sitting and writing a comic and drawing a comic, sitting at a desk, holding a pen, moving your wrist, those are all things that I could only do for like 10, 15 minutes maximum in a day, sometimes in a week, and so there's really like a limit to what you can do, especially when you're it takes such a long time to finish a page when you're going over things and you're changing things and things like that. You don't realize how quickly 15 minutes goes past.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been something that's been difficult, and for me I think Sennen is a triumph because of that, because I genuinely didn't know if I'd be able to get it done as my health has kind of deteriorated and will continue to deteriorate. So I'm like very proud of myself for finishing it. But yeah, it's been a very hard ride. I think I'm just so grateful to Avery Hill for sticking with me, because it's taken so long, and there was a couple of false starts, and there were times where I was just rushing to get pages done because I wanted to get it out, but they weren't a good quality because I was just doing it as quickly as I could so that I could go back to bed and not wreck my body too much. But yeah.
That's really tricky. I've had people occasionally ask me at comics events and things, and they just say, how do you find the time to do this? And they've said that they want to make a comic, but they just don't have the time or the energy. And if you work full time or have kids, whatever it might be, or have whatever health issues, it can be so hard.
Yeah.
I think it's just if I don't know, the only thing I can think to say is if you just try and make small progress and keep it going, because I find if I leave a project for ages, I find it really hard to go back to. So I just try, like if you do like even a half a page or something, and then another half a page in a couple of days or whatever, just keeps it feeling like it's something that you're actually working on.
What I found really useful when I was like bedbound, because I couldn't like text or use my body in any way, but I could put my phone on my chest and just talk into it. And so I just talk like dialogue with Sennen and someone else, and then it kind of puts me in the mindset of the character. I can still feel like I'm immersed in the story even if I can't physically do anything. And then when I was feeling a bit healthier, I could replay that back and be like, oh yeah, that was a good idea, maybe I'll put that down now that I can.
That's really great, because they tell you to kind of speak your dialogue when you're writing aloud anyway, to see if it sounds kind of natural.
Yeah. The downside is that I'm quite a sarky person, and so as a result, Sennen's quite sarky because it's just me talking. I'm like, okay, well, I suppose that's her character now.
It sort of fits the story and the characters. So
it all works out.
Is there anything that you're thinking of working on next, or already working on as a next project?
Yeah, so I've got two things right now. I'm kind of going between them, trying to figure out which one I want to focus on more. But I've had this story for about 8 years, which is called Sometimes Cafe, and it's a story about grief and magic in combination. But the whole script for that is done. I just need to draw it. And then I also really want to do a comic about fibromyalgia and my experience with chronic illness generally, because I find that a lot of people don't really understand it and don't really understand the symptoms and things like that, because when people see me, I look fine. And so yeah, I think it would be a good thing to be able to kind of share my experience with that. So those are the two things I'm working on. Who knows, it might be another 4 years till anyone sees me again.
I mean, that sort of thing can be really helpful to other people as well, to just be able to say, if they have the same condition, to be able to show the book to someone and say, look, this is what it is.
My aunt has it too. Well, she has ME and fibromyalgia, like, are very, very similar. And for her, like, before I was diagnosed, I never really understood her and what she was going through. And it's only now that I've experienced it, and I'm like, whoa. And I think, so for people like her, it would be really useful to be able to just hand out something to their friends and be like, this is what this is like, in a way that is really hard to put into words. So maybe, if I can do that, in comic form. That might be a good thing. But yeah, those are the next 2 steps for me.
Excellent. Well, I'm really impressed with the book, and that you've made it despite having some stuff to deal with. And I think everyone should read it. Are your earlier zines, are they all available to buy as well somewhere?
Yeah, I have an Etsy shop which is linked on my website, which is shantirai.co.uk.
Okay.
Or if you just Google me, it'll probably pop up somewhere. So yeah, they're available to buy somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you're Shanti Draws, I think, on social media, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, on Instagram, because I probably do have a Twitter, but I've not touched it in a decade. So.
That's quite understandable.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Shanti for talking to me, and thank you for listening.